ByteDance is training a model with up to 10 trillion parameters. That is bigger than any AI system Anthropic has ever confirmed building. Meta just released a coding agent engineered specifically to take down Claude Code. And OpenAI made its newest model completely free and unlimited for 1 billion people, while quietly admitting something even bigger is almost ready to ship. All 3 of these happened in the last 48 hours. Not this month, not this week, 48 hours. I'm breaking down the real numbers behind each one, what the companies aren't saying out loud, and which of these 3 should actually worry you the most. Let's get into it. Start with ByteDance, because this is the one with the most weight behind it. The Financial Times reported that ByteDance, the company behind TikTok, is pre-training a model with as many as 10 trillion parameters. That number comes from a 2,000-person team inside the company called Seed, and the founder, Zhang Yiming, personally told them not to shortcut the process by distilling a rival's model. He wants this one built from scratch. To put 10 trillion in perspective, the current record holder out of China is Moonshot AI's Kimi K3, sitting at 2.8 trillion parameters. Before that model shipped, the 2 leaders were Minimax's Longcat 2.0 and DeepSeek's V4 Pro, both around 1.6 trillion. So this isn't a small step up from where Chinese labs were sitting 6 months ago. It's close to a 10 times jump. And here's the number that actually matters. Industry estimates put Anthropic's current flagship, Mythos 5, at around 8 trillion parameters, with the safety-hardened version, Fable 5, sitting near 5 trillion. If ByteDance's numbers hold, they are not chasing the Chinese frontier anymore. They're building something larger than the biggest model Anthropic is known to have ever trained. Now the honest caveat, because raw parameter counts get thrown around like they settle the argument, and they don't. Parameters are just the learned settings inside a model, and a bigger number doesn't automatically mean a smarter model. Plenty of bloated systems have lost to smaller, better trained ones. ByteDance hasn't disclosed the architecture, hasn't said how many of those parameters actually activate per query, and Reuters said outright they couldn't independently verify the report. So keep a healthy amount of skepticism here. But even with all of that, the direction is the real story. For 2 years, the entire narrative around Chinese labs has been efficiency, doing more with less compute, being clever under constraints. This is the opposite. This is a lab deciding to go head-to-head at frontier scale with a country that has never been outscaled. Pre-training alone typically runs 3 to 6 months at this size, so nothing ships tomorrow. Realistically, you're looking at early 2027 before this thing sees daylight. But the fact that they're even attempting it tells you the entire competitive floor just moved. Now here's where it gets almost funny, because while ByteDance was making headlines for going bigger, Meta made a move that's honestly the smarter play of the week, and almost nobody's talking about it correctly. Meta released Muse Code, a terminal-based coding agent, in beta, running on a brand new model called Muse Spark 1.2. And Mark Zuckerberg posted about it himself, saying it can handle full software engineering tasks across large repositories, planning changes, writing code, running tests, and verifying the result on its own. That's a direct shot at Claude Code, and Meta knows it. The engineering underneath is actually clever. Instead of spinning up a fresh agent for every task, Muse Code runs persistent background subagents that stay alive for the entire session, so they're not rereading the same codebase over and over. Each one can even work inside its own isolated Git worktree, meaning multiple agents can edit code at the same time without stepping on each other. And every single action, every model call, every tool run, every file edit gets written to a local event log. If your laptop crashes or the process dies mid-task, the agent picks up exactly where it left off instead of starting from scratch. That's the difference between a tool you trust to run overnight and one you have to babysit. But stay with me, because the benchmark numbers are the part that actually tells you who Meta was aiming at. On Terminal Bench 2.1, which tests how well an agent operates inside a real terminal, Muse Spark 1.2 is beaten by exactly one model, Opus 5 Max. On Deep Suite 1.1, a brutal benchmark covering over 100 real coding tasks across 5 programming languages with manually verified tests, it again lands in second place behind Opus 5 Max and GPT-5.6 Terra Max. Same story on Meta's own internal benchmark built from real pull requests. Second place every single time, always behind the exact same model. That's not an accident. That's Meta telling you precisely who they built this to compete with. And the pricing tells the rest of the story. Standard pricing runs $1.25 per million input tokens. But there's a discounted contributor tier at 10 cents, a fraction of the price, in exchange for Meta being allowed to train on your code and prompts. That's not really a price point. That's a data acquisition strategy wearing a discount as a disguise. Which brings us to OpenAI, who spent this week doing the one thing that only they can actually afford to do. GPT-5.6 Luna, their newest model, is now completely free with unlimited text conversations for roughly 1 billion people. It replaces GPT 5.5 as the default for free users starting this week, and they added a new Think button so free users can manually push the model to reason longer on harder questions, the first time that control has ever been available outside a paid tier. The catch is that unlimited only covers text. Image generation, file uploads, and voice still run on the old limits. But here's the number that should actually get your attention. OpenAI tested the upgraded models on finance, healthcare, and legal prompts, where a single factual mistake fails the entire response. Under that standard, their upgraded Sol model produced 68% fewer factual errors than the model it's replacing, and Luna came in 62% lower. That's not a small tuning pass. That's a real accuracy jump rolling out to 1 billion weekly users at once. And that free release was actually the smaller headline. Buried inside an OpenAI research post about solving 10 decades-old math problems was a quiet confirmation of the name of their next flagship model, Astra. Multiple reports now claim an internal checkpoint codenamed Muse has already been marked release candidate, the final stage before shipping, with some sources claiming a launch as soon as next week. Take that specific timeline with caution, since it traces back to a single unverified leak. But the model itself is confirmed by OpenAI in their own writing. Early estimates put GPT 4.5 at around 5 trillion parameters, and Astra somewhere between 7 and 10 trillion, built specifically for long-running, multi-agent collaboration, where several AI instances work together on one problem for hours or even days. OpenAI's own framing is that their post-training has always been the strongest in the industry. That's how GPT 5.5 performed as well as it did, and their only real weakness against Anthropic was the size of the pre-training base underneath it. Astra is built to erase that weakness completely, aimed at exactly one target, taking the top spot away from Fable 5. So here's where all three of these actually land. ByteDance is betting that raw scale alone can close the gap with the American frontier. Meta is betting that better engineering around a smaller model can steal developers away from Claude Code. And OpenAI is betting it can outtrain everyone else on a foundation bigger than it's ever had. 3 completely different strategies, 3 different labs, all inside 1 week. Whichever one of these actually delivers first is going to set the tone for the rest of the year. Drop which one you think wins in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.